Jesse Blake Sports Report. Really? Oh, wait, really? The Jesse Blake Sports Report. That's it?
Don't forget, it's the Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake.
That's kind of redundant.
Dude, is there a problem?
No, that's fine. I just, I thought maybe you guys would come up with something, good.
Man, just read it.
You know what? Doesn't matter to me. I get paid by the word. Let's do this. The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
We're bringing on now Tim Hauraney, host of the TSN Racing Podcast. Find Tim at Tim Hauraney on Twitter, on Instagram, wherever you do your social media. Tim, he's been covering F1 for years, decades, covering motorsport for decades. You've been a driver on circuits around the world. If I come to you and say, hey, I want to get into F1, all my friends are now talking about it. Maybe I've seen a handful of episodes of Drive to Survive or something. Where do I start? What do I do?
Well, I guess you could start by giving me a follow, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, you start listening to the TSN Racing Podcast. That's what you do, because that's it. You're going to keep up with your news, and then you keep going.
Yeah, pretty much. But seriously, though, I mean, yeah, I've been involved, like you were saying off the top of it, Jesse. I've been involved in racing since I was like 9 years old, and I've never, and we talked about this before we came on here. We have never seen the sport like get this big this quickly before, and this is all new for like a lot of us who are involved in racing. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the best way of kind of just starting to get into Formula One is following a lot of the experts and those who cover Formula One as their full-time positions, and I would say that's probably the best way to kind of get started. I mean, you can always go and play F1 2021 and F1 2022 on your gaming console whenever that comes out. I recommend getting yourself a steering wheel and foot pedals so then you can actually kind of get an understanding for how difficult it is to drive a Formula One car. But those are always good. I mean, the simulators are always a really good way of getting into the sport and getting a better understanding for it.
Fun. How are the the longtime F1 fans reacting to the boom of all of these new fans incoming?
Yeah, I think it's pretty good. I mean, of course, you're going to get fans who are really, what's the word I'm looking for? Protective of. Yeah, maybe like protective of the sport. I mean, because they've been around since like the 70s, the 80s. I've been around since like 80, let me do the math here, 87, I think. So, I mean, you're going to get those types of fans, but then you're also going to get fans who are actually pretty welcoming, who want to help. I mean, I had a friend of mine who was in Monaco a few years ago, and there was an influencer who was there who'd been asked to kind of come to the Monaco Grand Prix, and they didn't really know what was like going on. Like they didn't really understand. And my buddy could kind of like notice that. So he reached over and was like, hey, like, do you know what's happening here? Do you need a little bit of help? And they were like, yeah, I have no idea like what's going on. And he's like, okay, well, let me tell you what's up. So this is this is that, this is it. This is what it means when this happens. So there are other fans out there who are more than welcome to like educate new fans that are coming in. I would say most Formula One fans or racing fans in general are happy that this is kind of happening simply because it keeps the sport alive. It keeps it healthy as well. And also I think it forces some, change on the racing in general. I mean, for years, like we saw some pretty boring races, like some pretty bad ones. We also saw some great ones. But having Liberty Media come in to Formula One, purchase it, and then kind of start to retool things over the years and really saying like, look, we've got a great property here. We have a great group of personalities and we have a great sport, but the content that's happening on the track could be better. And this is what we want to do. We want to make that better. We want to make that more entertaining. So I think what the Liberty Media has done in terms of sort of rejigging the on-track spectacle has been for the positive. I mean, these cars this season, I think as these regulations stay in place for the next few seasons, we're going to see some really great racing. I mean, the past 5 rounds, because we've been through 5 rounds so far, the past 5 rounds have been really good. We've seen battles for the lead. You know, it wasn't too often we actually saw legit battles for the lead. Maybe in 2021 we saw some, but so far we've pretty much seen almost every single race, given maybe Australia, like a battle for the lead. So it's been good that way, Jesse. I mean, I think as a fan, a hardcore Formula One fan, I think you have to be happy about that. But I think you also have to be happy about the boom and the growth and popularity of the sport.
I've never been to an F1 race. We mentioned this when we were talking off air. What's the difference between watching on TV and watching live? Like, I hope to get to one day. What am I going to experience? What's it like when you're there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jesse. I mean, because there are 2 different aspects to watching a race live and watching one on television. And I need to be upfront about this. I've only actually ever sat in the grandstands to watch a car race, and it wasn't even a Formula One race, to watch a car race once. And it was at the Molson Indy. It was 2002. I was racing in Canadian Pro Formula Ford Championship, and Paul Tracy gave us some tickets to go and sit in the grandstands and watch the big event. So we got to go and do that. And that's the only time I've actually ever been in the grandstands to watch a race. But that being said, you know, I can take that and put it towards Formula One. And I would say one of the things you kind of miss out on, I think, would be strategy, team radio. And I've always found team radio to be very helpful when watching on television, because you get more information. Yeah, you know, like the broadcasters, the play-by-play people, the color commentators, you know, they do fantastic work, but sometimes they don't actually even know what is really going on inside the race car, because F1 has become, in some parts, so complex. So the radio messages that the driver delivers to the team are actually quite helpful. It gives us a better understanding of like what they're having to deal with when they're out on the racetrack. So I would say the main differences would be that. And then, like, I guess you also kind of miss that pre-race sort of build up in terms of like who's on the grid, what are the storylines coming in. Like when you're in the grandstands and you're getting ready for the race, I mean, your adrenaline is just as high as like the drivers are, because like the engines are revving and you're getting ready for it, and what's going to happen, you have no idea. So those are the 2 like different aspects. I would say at the track, in the grandstands, your adrenaline is probably like through the roof, but at home, you're kind of getting a bit more information.
As a media member, you said something that's fascinating. Are you privy to like all of the radio that's happening in all the cars to their teams?
I get some of the radio. Yeah, I can't say like how or why, but yeah, I do get some radio for sure. Okay. I don't know if everyone else does or not. I have no idea. I mean, they probably do. But at the same time, it's very helpful. I find anyways, because it gives me more insight as to like what's going on. Like I was saying, out on the racetrack, it helps me understand what the driver's having to deal with, what the driver's having to battle with. And yeah, that's all really relevant and important information, because I mean, what makes it difficult, and some people might be thinking this, and I should probably fill them in on it, is the tires. Like when I raced, you know, we ran on tires that you were doing qualifying laps in the race, like as hard as you could. You were always pushing. You never stopped pushing. And now in Formula One, with the way these tires are designed, they're actually designed to like degrade, drop off very quickly to help spice up the entertainment. It's a lot different from what I'm used to racing with. And you really have to experience that. It's hard. It's not easy to kind of like get in the car and make it fast right away without kind of destroying the tire. And so when you're hearing the driver's feedback over the radio, they talk a lot about that. Like maybe they made a mistake that generated too much heat into the tire. Now they got thermal degradation because they made that mistake. And that's going to play a huge factor as their first or second stint starts to kind of unfold throughout the race. And that's their story. And without that radio information, it's really hard to kind of like get a good understanding of what's going on.
I'm kind of skipping ahead here and where I wanted the conversation to go, but on Lewis Hamilton this weekend at the Miami Grand Prix, when he's complaining on the radio about the tires, and he's saying, "You tell me about how this should work." Is that sort of the stuff that you're hearing over the radio?
Well, that stuff with like Lewis is a little different because usually in the past we've heard Lewis kind of talk about, hey, like I'm coming into pit, or these tires are no good, like we need a new set, or why did you put me on the medium? We knew the soft was going to be good. And he's usually like dictating that kind of stuff sometimes. And he relays a lot of information from tires and things like that back to Bono, who's his engineer. And so for Lewis this past weekend, and I would say the season just as a whole, just having a bit of trouble getting to grips with the race car for sure, only because it's got a sweet spot to it. And that's what, those are Toto Wolff's words. And it's very particular in terms of setup. So in a direction that Lewis might want to go in, the car may not want to do that. And so he'll have to find another avenue to take the car to kind of get it into that window that delivers the performance and keeps him somewhat confident and comfortable inside the race car. I mean, you're never completely comfortable in a race car. It's a lot of high stress. You're always trying to manage that. And if you can get a little bit comfortable, I mean, that's important. If you can find that balance with understanding what the car is going to give you, know what it's going to give you when you go into a corner, and know the information you're going to get back, which is extremely important. But just for Lewis as a whole, and we could probably go down this rabbit hole right now, is just that I think eventually for this team and for this car, there's going to be a point where they're going to have to make a decision on which way they want to go in terms of philosophy and aerodynamic philosophy with the race car. They had one set of aero philosophies when they started preseason testing in Barcelona, and then they showed up to Bahrain with a completely overhauled race car, something that was totally wild. None of us ever expected it. It's like, this car has no side pods. What's going on? And all that kind of stuff. And so that was a little bit jarring, I would say. And I think they were not expecting to have the porpoising issues that they've been having. That is something that just didn't show up in the wind tunnel. It's not something you can replicate in CFD or in the wind tunnel either. So I think for this team, there's going to be a point where they're going to have to make a decision on what they want to do. Do they want to keep blowing their budget on this design, or do they kind of want to go back to what they were using in Barcelona and maybe build from there and then aim for the next season? Because in all honesty, I mean, in terms of like Lewis gunning down an 8th world title this season, it's unrealistic. I don't think that's going to happen. The favorites have kind of already shown their hands and what they got, and what they've got is pretty good. And, I think in terms of Lewis's teammate, George Russell, and he downplays this a lot, even when I talk to him, but, I think his time at Williams driving such a difficult car kind of gave him a different tool set, if you would call it that, where the car was just it was a handful. It was so difficult to drive. It was one of the hardest cars I think he's ever driven. And then moving over to Mercedes, where something similar is going on. It's not the Williams car wasn't porpoising, but in terms of an ill-handling race car, I mean, that's kind of what he's got. And he's been able to actually really do a nice job of getting it into an operating window for himself and extracting some performance from the race car. So in a nuts and bolts sort of answer to all of this, I mean, that's kind of what it just boils down to. If they can bring big enough upgrades for Barcelona and they work, I mean, great. And then there's more to this, Jesse, we can get into and go down if you want. Sure. But yeah, this is kind of like surface level stuff.
So my question there is, the F1 season, it's a long season. if you look at the odds right now in Sports Interaction, sportsinteraction.com for the F1 Drivers' Championship, Max Verstappen is the leader. He's the favorite at 1.83 odds. And then Charles Leclerc comes in at second at 2.10 odds. And then it falls off a cliff. Lewis Hamilton, 26-1 to win the Drivers' Championship. And then Russell, 41-1 odds to win the Drivers' Championship. Why is it so difficult for anybody to come back mid-season and challenge for the Drivers' Championship? Why is there not like, hey, they're still in this race, even though we're only 6 races in, they can still come back? We're already ruling out Mercedes. Why is that?
Yeah, if you take a look at this, another great question. I mean, if you take a look at how like a Formula One car evolves, it evolves over the season. Mm-hmm. So let's take, Red Bull, for instance. They've had reliability issues to start things off, and that's really costed them in terms of the two performances. Red Bull and Ferrari are actually very, very close on pace, but that reliability for the Red Bull has really let them down. So reliability is almost like a quick fix, where aerodynamics, mechanical engineering, all of that stuff it takes a lot longer to fix, and it takes a lot longer to develop, not necessarily band-aids, but a solution to the issues that are causing the lack of performance. If you look at, let's say, Ferrari in Barcelona, they're most likely coming with a bigger upgrade, and so is everybody else, right? And then you have to take a look at, okay, so if Mercedes is already 0.8 in quali pace off of like Ferrari, Red Bull, and if Ferrari's bringing another upgrade, they are either going to extend that advantage or maintain it, where Mercedes is trying to play catch up. And they need to come with a big enough upgrade that kind of hits a home run. And it's not easy to hit a home run, right? And so that's what you're kind of working with, because all season it's going to be like this. Like Ferrari's going to make an upgrade, so is Mercedes. Red Bull's going to make an upgrade, so is Ferrari, so is Mercedes. And it's going to just stay like that. That gap is just going to remain as the season keeps going, unless a team can really, like I was saying, hit a home run. And there's going to be other teams in Barcelona that are going to be bringing big upgrades, which are important. And the thing is that you want to try and carve out some of the gaps that you're losing to the teams that are faster than you. Maybe not take a full second out, because that's really impossible to do, but take a couple tenths here, take a couple tenths there. And that's basically what teams are kind of taking a look at now.
Okay. And the other driver, I mentioned a couple drivers there. I just want to show some love, since we were talking about Mercedes. Valtteri Bottas on Sunday. Such an impressive performance in the Alfa Romeo car. Like what he's able to do there, even though he's coming off of a Mercedes where he was in the best car, obviously last year, and he's going to that one. His driving, it's excellent, and I wish he was able to stay with the pace of Russell and Hamilton there. But yeah, just can we show some love to Bottas for a little bit? And throw him into this group of the top drivers. I think he's got a sneaky chance to get a podium this year. Right? Yeah,
100%. I totally agree with you, Jesse. I mean, like, one of the things that, for Valtteri is he's just got to stop looking in those mirrors, man. Like, that's basically what costed him the spot in Miami. Poor guy. I mean, at the same time, like, he's an incredible qualifier. I mean, this guy is absolutely like outrageously good. But yeah, I think Valtteri getting onto the podium for this season, it's not unrealistic. That's for sure. I definitely think it could happen. If we take a look at like Valtteri's full race weekend, having that crash in free practice, which really set him back, because when a driver comes to a brand new circuit like a Miami they've never been to, it's difficult, because you're having to learn something new, and the amount of information you're having to take in. So if we take this, I'm trying to think of like a comparison, because it's really, really difficult, but it's basically you're doing something you're driving a race car that you've always driven, but you're driving it somewhere you've never driven it. And sometimes the racetrack will offer little things to help the car go quick. Like maybe there's a bump as you're turning into, turn 2 that's going to give the car just enough rotation that you actually don't need to really turn the steering wheel that much to give you enough rotation where the car just kind of lands and you're off. And so that's important because you're not wasting time and you're actually finding time very quickly. And these are just little characteristics that the racetrack offers to you that you kind of learn as you go through your practice sessions, and then you start to fine tune the race car. Okay, it needs a little front wing here. Okay, we need a little bit more damper here. Okay, we need a spring change here. And that's when your mind starts working on, okay, what do we need to change for this corner, this corner, this corner? What is the car giving me? And then you have to adapt. And then you have to think like, okay, well, this is the most that I'm going to get from the technical engineering side of things. Let's see if the driving can drive a way around this. Maybe I can drive the car a little bit differently into the corner. That's not going to give me so much understeer or won't give me any oversteer on exit, et cetera, et cetera. So for Valtteri, losing those practice sessions, it's detrimental to how your weekend kind of unfolds because you're not getting any track time. And if you're not getting any track time, you're not learning. And then you're not developing the car so you can take it to the limit when you get to qualifying. So for Valtteri to qualify, I believe it was 5th. So for Valtteri to qualify where he qualified was unbelievable. Like that is an incredible achievement. And I don't think it got enough recognition, which I really think it should have, because what Valtteri did was not an easy thing to do for any driver. It doesn't matter how long they've been racing for. It's incredibly difficult. And you got to be one of the best in the world to be able to achieve something like that and to have the confidence and the guts to just throw one on the line, because it's like you have no idea what you're going into when you're getting into like a push lap. You have no clue. So for him to do that and then come out on top with, I believe it was 7th in Miami, absolutely unbelievable. And that car, I think, probably had no business being that high up. I know I was speaking with Guan Yu Zhou, or Zhou Guan Yu, I should say, pardon me. But after he retired from the race, and he was a little bit disappointed because he had felt that, Alfa Romeo did have a pretty good car this weekend.
A great race. It was very
and he was, I think he was pretty confident that he was going to score points. But you know what? I think, 7th where Valtteri finished, I think he could have probably finished a lot higher than 7th if he hadn't have made that small mistake.
Mm-hmm. And the Miami Grand Prix on Sunday, it was probably the biggest financial celebrity Grand Prix there's ever been in the history of F1, just the amount of people that were there and the fanfare. But before we get into that, because I got to ask you how Ashton Kutcher smelled, I want to know about the track. We'll do the technical stuff first, and then I need your celebrity sighting rundown list, okay? So the track... What is this thing about the track melting because the cars were running on it too much? Like, what was going on there? Because that's the biggest complaint from the drivers, that the track is literally denigrating as they're driving on it. Can you explain what's going on there? For sure.
So I had a friend of mine who was doing hot laps over the weekend. And what that means is he's basically taking guests and celebrities of the race team, putting them in one of their cars, like not the Formula One cars, but like road going cars, and like taking them for thrill rides around the racetrack. And on Thursday, he was out practicing and he came back to me and he's like, dude, he's like, turn 7 and turn 17, man. I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's coming up. I'm like, what do you mean it's coming up? Maybe the pavement's actually coming up? He's like, yeah, dude. He's like, the pavement's actually coming out of the ground.
Oh, goodness.
I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. He's like, no. He's like, just wait till these F1 cars hit the track on Friday, because they'll literally, the cars are so powerful that they will pull the entire track apart. And so I was like, oh my God, get to the track Friday morning. And I find out that they've actually resurfaced turn 7, turn 17, actually like dug it up a bit, and they put down fresh new asphalt.
Wow.
Well, the cars were digging that up too. So they had to go back out and into turn 17 in particular. And they actually really had to dig it out. They had to really dig that up early Saturday morning. And they had to lay down a fresh new stretch of asphalt. So it has something to do with the asphalt mixture and the concrete mixture that they actually use in Florida, because they can't outsource. Apparently they couldn't outsource the track materials to bring in
like Florida state laws that require them to use Florida materials.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, exactly. So what would be really helpful is if they kind of got something from Bahrain, or if they had something that Saudi Arabia used for their track, simply because it's so hot. Like the track temperature was 50, 51 degrees most of the weekend. Like these guys are racing in 51 degree. Then you got your balaclavas, then you got your fireproof underwear, then you got your race suit on top of that, and then you got your helmet. And it probably just feels like there's a hairdryer being blown at you for the entire race. Plus you're dealing with all the G-forces and the braking and the acceleration and the turning and all that to go on top of it. So it'd be very difficult physically because of those temperatures, but those temperatures are also destroying the track a bit. So I think moving forward, they're probably going to have to take a look at how they can kind of fix that up, because it was also like playing a bit of havoc with drivers' push laps and qualifying. And I spoke with Daniel Ricciardo about this on Saturday. And yeah, he just made mention that with turn 17, coming down into it, you're going from a surface that has so much high grip because it's evolving onto a surface that has very little grip because it's brand new, and it catches a lot of the drivers out because you want to be aggressive and get back to the power. But if there's not a lot of grip there and what you're expecting to be there, you're going to get a lot of slippage. You're going to get a lot of wheel spin. You're going to get some oversteer. And so that kind of hampered a bit of his push lap, he was telling me. So that is a bit of an issue. And it's one of the things they're definitely going to have to take a look at when coming back to this circuit for next season. And then I also think they're probably going to take a look at that slow chicane at the back there. I kind of liked it, man. It was kind of like
I didn't mind it.
Same here.
It didn't create any drama, really. It did. I don't think it did what the organizers expected it to do, but it didn't really bother me.
It was what I want to say is like, I don't want to say it's like very American, but it kind of reminded me like of the Champ Car days, like some of the street circuits we would race on. There were just like, there was things like that going up a hill over a set of like train tracks or something ridiculous like that. And it's like, hey, that's what we got to deal with. But I actually kind of liked it. I thought it was kind of cool, but I have a feeling they'll probably do away with that for next season.
Yeah, too many drivers complain that there's like, okay, we'll get rid of it. We don't want this story in the media. So last thing before we just do a quick look ahead to the Spanish Grand Prix. I mentioned this before, probably the biggest celebrity attended F1 event ever. Who did you see? What was it like rubbing shoulders with the big wigs? All
right, so there were, good question. I mean, there were a lot of celebrities there for sure. Probably the most that I've seen at a Grand Prix. I mean, Tom Brady has been to Grand Prix before. He went to Montreal in 2018, and I saw him in the paddock there, and then saw him again at an after party thing. And super nice guy, by the way. But yeah, so he's been to Grand Prix before, but I would say like.
So Tom Brady's not a casual; he's a hardcore. He's been around.
Yeah, he follows the sport actually, nice. And I think he's also doing some work with IndyCar, if I'm not mistaken, for this upcoming Indy 500. But yeah, let me. I just gotta roll through my brain here about everybody who I saw. So, okay, I was waiting at paddock entrance, and usually the celebrities kind of come through there, and I didn't have anything to do for like an hour, so I figured, well, I'll just go down there, hang around and kill an hour and see who I see, and I had been told that The Rock was supposed to be there. Okay, that's what I was told. He was supposed to be coming, but he didn't show up because like my girlfriend was really disappointed because she loves The Rock. And I was just like, okay, I'll get you a picture of The Rock if I see him. And I also wanted to yell at him, can you smell what The Rock is cooking, and see what happens, right? But like he didn't end up showing up. But I'm standing there, and there's a lady sort of standing beside me, and she's got like this really cool Williams like Miami kit on and this Williams bucket hat. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, God, you look awfully like familiar. And then this Williams team personnel came down, got her. We're like, hey, we're going to take you and put you in the Formula One car now. And they go down, and I saw the picture. I'm like, oh my God, it's like Catherine Hahn. And I had to tell my girlfriend she loves her too. So I was like, I was literally standing like right beside her, and I didn't even like clue in. Sometimes you're standing beside these folks and like you don't even know. Like I literally ran into Zoe Saldana. I literally ran into her, apologized for running into her.
You mean literally like bumped into her?
Yes, like not just bumped, like really bumped, because I wasn't like watching where I was going. But she was super nice, like super nice. And as she's walking away, I was like, God, you look awfully familiar. And then I was like, Gamora. So there is things like that kind of happen. They're just standing beside you, and you're just like, you don't even clue in until there's like a swarm of people like come around you, and then you're like, they're not here for me. And then you're kind of just like, oh, okay. It's like, who are you? And then you take a closer look. Oh, you're so and so. It was cool to see David Beckham. I got up close with him.
Nice.
Who else? Ashton Kutcher.
He's David Beckham's a big F1 fan as well. He's been around for a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess apparently he was good friends or knew Jensen Button well, because Jensen like stopped and they both started chatting with each other and shook hands and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, wow, Jensen, you know David Beckham. He's like, yeah, I'm like, that is awesome.
Right.
But
and he has the Red Bull connection with marrying a Spice Girl. You know, there's that.
Yes, probably. There's something to do with something to do. There has to be some sort of correlation there for sure.
Right.
Seeing some of the Miami Dolphins players was cool. I got like pretty up close with them, and like I'd never, aside from like Tom Brady, he's actually quite big in person, which people seem to say he's actually kind of a little smaller for like a quarterback, but like I thought he's pretty big. But some of these like linemen and also wide receivers, man, they're huge. Like, like calves. Like this is it's wild. Like just massive athletes for sure. Ran into Venus Williams.
That's cool.
Yeah, she's a nice lady for sure. Saw the first lady. Actually, a friend of mine was trying to actually get a shot of he was getting a picture, and like the security kind of like picked him up and like moved him. So like,
no way.
Get through. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there's a lot, man. There was a lot there. I'm trying to like, I'm blanking, but I'm trying to like go through like everyone I saw. But
no, everybody listening, you should go listen to the TSN Racing Pod, because you ran down a lot of celebrities there, and I was just fascinated by that aspect. It's a different dynamic, because when you're at a basketball game, you're not rubbing shoulders with Drake, like you're not all courtside with him there. But if the F1, if you're privy to the places that you are, you're right there with everybody else, and it's really cool.
Yeah, Justin, that's a great point, because like, if you buy like paddock passes, not paddock passes, I'm trying to remember what it's called. It's it basically, you get access to hospitality and what they call like F1 experiences, and they kind of take you for tours of the paddock. Now for media members, we're allowed to just kind of hang out in there, because we have to kind of go and see the teams, and we have to go and see the drivers, and our credentials allow us to do that. And those credentials are not easy to get. They are difficult to get. But for the F1 experiences and for the paddock club, they pay, they show up, they get the hospitality, they have a good time, but they also get to go for tours throughout the paddock with tour guides. And once that's kind of happening, sometimes they just run into celebrities, and it just, that's it. They're going to come over, take pictures with them, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think like that part of, or that experience with like F1 and what they do in terms of that experience, I think it's kind of cool. It's different. I mean, it obviously has that exclusivity sort of factor to it as well. But yeah, I just I kind of like how they kind of set that up sometimes, because it makes it feel maybe bigger than what it is, but it's neat, I think.
Yeah, because it's 3 days of events and stuff. Like, it's one race on Sunday, but it's really 3 days of just hanging around and looking at the cars and just drivers walking around. It's such a cool dynamic.
100%. And like I think for me, I still get geeked out when I get to see like pit stop practices. I still I love that stuff, and I get to see the cars close up, and then I get to also take a closer look at like, oh, that's different. You've changed this. This is what it was last weekend, and this is what you're running this weekend. Oh, that's quite fascinating. And then kind of getting that understanding of like, oh, this is a new upgrade, and that's another question I can ask a driver. So getting that access is, I guess for the media, it's pretty crucial, I think, because you can evolve your story for sure. And so, yeah, that kind of stuff for me really fascinates me.
And lastly, looking ahead to next weekend, the Spanish Grand Prix. Again, we're going to grab the odds from sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. Max Verstappen, he's the favorite going into Sunday, 1.94 odds. Then Charles Leclerc at 2.02. Carlos Sainz at 11-1. Checo at 15-1. And Lewis Hamilton at 18-1. The line everybody keeps saying is when Max Verstappen finishes a race, he wins it. He's 3 for 3 in finishing and wins. Is that what everybody's expecting? Max goes out, and if his car stays on the track, that he's going to finish and win?
I don't necessarily agree with it 100%, because Ferrari's going to bring upgrades, like I had mentioned there, and so too might Red Bull. But I think Ferrari's upgrades may be a little bit bigger. But that being said, it's really difficult to tell so far this season who's going to be competitive at which tracks. I mean, so far in qualifying, the Ferrari has been excellent. It's been so good in qualifying pace that I think it comes down to who can stitch the perfect lap together. But in the race, I mean, the race with, Max Verstappen driving like a Red Bull is really good. I mean, one of the things I think people haven't kind of sort of looked at maybe is, I would say Max Verstappen's maturity. Like, he's winning that championship in 2021, having that confidence, going through that battle with Lewis. I think that's hardened him. Like, he's better at judging and taking his time and looking at, is this the right opportunity for me to make a move, or is it not? Do I need to be really aggressive here, or should I conserve? And that also includes with the tire, like you saw in Miami, where, he let Leclerc sort of pull away. Leclerc was able to break the DRS, and Max just kind of bided his time, kept that gap to a certain minimum. And then once the team kind of radioed to him, like, hey, it looks like Leclerc is having some front graining issues, maybe now's your time to start pushing. And that's when Max kind of flips the switch, right? And it's like, okay, I've conserved the tire enough. Now I can go on and attack. And so I think that's also sort of new to his game, where with Verstappen, it was always pushing it 100%, race hard and battle as hard as you can.
Yeah. No, it'll be fascinating to see the battle throughout the season. I got some rooting interest. I flagged to Mercedes, so we'll see if they can come back in this. I'm hoping the porpoising doesn't continue, but we'll see. Thank you so much, Tim Hauraney, for joining us here today, giving us a little F1 primer. Follow Tim at Tim Hauraney on all of your social media, and listen to the TSN Racing Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you again.
Hey. No problem. Thanks very much, Jesse, for having me. Really appreciate it.
If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, yes, I did get a haircut in between the first segment and this segment. In between Tim joining us and now us talking about some betting action I see on Sports Interaction, I did in fact get a haircut, and I hope it looks good. I hope it looks good to your ears for everybody listening. And if you're watching, I know, please don't make fun of me about my new hair. Anyways, let's get to what I'm seeing. I don't have a fancy name for this segment yet, and maybe I'll do best bets with Blake. Best bets with Blake. That's 3 B's. 3 B's is a good alliteration. So best bets with Blake is what we'll call it right now. I just came up with that off the top of my head, if you didn't already notice. I'm on sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. The way I usually hit my bets is live betting. I consider myself a live bet king. All season long, I take Leafs 2.5 when they're down, and they usually come back and at least make it close to where they get within 2 goals, and I cash that bet consistently. And during the NFL season, I'm real good at identifying, okay, this game's it's in the second quarter right now. This team looks like garbage, and this team is underperforming, and they're going to come back. So I love the live bet aspect of betting on Sports Interaction. They got all the live bets, especially through the NFL season. That's where I tend to shine with my live bets. But I want to give you some action for Friday. A couple things I'm looking at. 1, Sidney Crosby might not play on Friday versus the New York Rangers. He got injured last game, left, did not come back in the third. We'll talk about the hit on the Steve Dangle podcast if you want to talk about it there. If you want more of my thoughts on it there, you'll get them. If you don't want them, well, you got to listen and you'll get them anyways. So Sidney Crosby might not play on Friday, but I don't think that should change your mind on whether or not the Penguins are going to win. I think the Penguins win that game. I think they show up and they do it for Crosby. So right now it's 2.05. So that's 2.05 times your money, so if you bet $10, you'd win $10.50. Straight up, Penguins beat the Rangers. But you can also take Pittsburgh plus 1.5. The odds aren't too great on that. So I think the Penguins win straight up. Penguins plus 1.5 is 1.44 on the decimal odds. So 1.44 times whatever your bet is. I think the Penguins win straight up. I think they close out the series versus the Rangers. At home in Pittsburgh as underdogs. I'm taking that. I'm taking that every day of the week. I might be wrong, but I'm taking it. Maybe this is the teams to close out the series parlay. I don't like parlays because I feel like you're just chancing it with something that's already like a chance, like you're already chancing it, but like sometimes it's fun to just throw in a parlay. So the other matchup I'm looking at is Golden State, the Golden State Warriors. They're playing the Memphis Grizzlies. They got embarrassed by the Memphis Grizzlies without Ja Morant in game number 5. So we're going to game 6 at home in Oracle Arena. It's the Warriors. Memphis still isn't going to have Ja Morant. It's minus 8.5. So minus 8.5 points for the Golden State Warriors. I think they win by at least 9. Friday night, close out the series versus Memphis. So the odds there are 1.91 odds that they win the game, minus 8.5. So a $10 bet pays you out $9.09. Please play responsibly if you're going to gamble. It's 19 plus to interact on Sports Interaction. These are the 2 bets I'm going to be going with on Friday. Pittsburgh, straight up. I might take the 1.5. If Crosby doesn't play, I might just okay, I'll take the 1.5 goals. But if Crosby's in, no, forget it. No 1.5. I'm going straight out. Pittsburgh closes it out, regardless of whether Crosby plays or not. I'm sticking with that. I don't care. I'm sticking with it. Pittsburgh closes it out at home in Pittsburgh. New York goes home. Shesterkin Hart Trophy talk all season was wasted because he can't get it done in the playoffs. That's the narrative. Golden State bounces back after just a beat down by Memphis. They take care of business Friday night in Golden State, in San Fran. Minus 8.5. That's what I'm rolling with. I don't know if you want to parlay those two. I'm going to do them as singles. But if you want to parlay them, go ahead. That's my Friday night bets. Once again, sportsinteraction.com/SDPN if you want to get involved. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. We have safe gambling tips in the description of this podcast. Just so everybody's aware, right now, this part of the podcast, it's 5 minutes after Leafs Lightning. Game 6. I've walked over from my TV to the computer just right after the goal was scored. What chaos. What a game. I'm speechless because I thought tonight was the night. Honestly, everything was aiming towards some sort of magic for the Leafs, and point put banging that home. Oh, they're gonna do it in Game 7. I believe home Saturday. Leafs get it done, but I genuinely thought tonight was the night. I was preparing Brandon Hagel phrases for that missed opportunity. I don't know if I was going to go with the Hagel bagel because he missed. It's a 0. Get it? Hagel bagel, or the Hagel hook. The Hagel hook I think is good because he hooked it wide right. I was ready. But we can get ready for Saturday. That's why you're up 3-2. That's not the fourth loss of the series. You can tell the Leafs came out and they played so well from middle of the second on. You know the Jesse Blake special of live betting where you take the Leafs plus 2.5 when they're down by 2 goals, and that would have cashed today because they always have some fight in them when they're playing well. That's what's different about this team. This team of old, the Leafs teams of old, always lose this game. The 10 out of 10 times they lose this game. And tonight they lost this game, but it feels different. It still feels different because there's so much fight in this team. Now we get to Game 7 where that's it. There's nothing else. And I believe that this squad doesn't have the demons that the other teams have. That's what we're always chalking it up to, because there's been so many times when they have these moments where they can close out series and they choke it away. But I don't look at this as a choke. I look at this as just there wasn't enough opportunities for them, and Tampa's so great that they were able to capitalize on theirs. I don't know. Saturday's going to be... It's going to be crazy. In Toronto, Game 7 again. Man, the next 48 hours, I'm so excited to be along this ride with you. Go Leafs, go. As always. The vision is not dead. Let's not lose hope. I thought it was going to be Willie. Oh my God, my mind is running a mile a minute because there's so many little things in that game that I can't wait to talk about tomorrow. I thought it was going to be Willie and OT at least twice. I saw some plays when they had the puck in the Lightning in the Lightning zone, and he was open. Oh, I thought Willie was going to do it just for all the haters and all the how long he's had this journey on this team. Or I thought Matthews had an opportunity to tip one past Vasilevsky. Vasilevsky's been shaky and tired. I'm going to shut up before I go on too long. I'll see you Saturday. Maybe in the stadium. I don't know. Maybe we'll try and we're going to try and get in, I think, me and Adam Wild. Steve's got to be on YouTube, but I'll see you tomorrow, I should say, on the Steve Dangle podcast for full Leafs coverage. I hope you enjoyed this one. The Jesse Blake Sports Report will be back here next week, next Thursday, as per usual. Maybe by that time, the Leafs will have slayed a couple demons. We'll see. Oh boy, Saturday is going to be crazy. Take care. Stay safe. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here, watching or listening to this right now, and I appreciate you for that.
The Jesse Blake Sports Report with Jesse Blake, powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's Sportsbook.
Jesse Blake, the guy that likes to hear his name twice in one sentence. Sure, I know him. No, he doesn't have an ego at all.